Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Bridge the Guest Experience Gap, How to Adapt Your Hotel Offerings to Meet Guests' Expectations. This is presented by Trust You, Travel Tripper, and StayNTouch. My name is Nancy Huang. I am the Marketing Director at Travel Tripper. And just a few housekeeping details to start off with. Today's webinar will be recorded and sent out to all registrants within the next 24 hours. Additionally, we'll be presenting about 30 minutes or so of content today, and we will leave some time right after that to answer any questions from the audience. So please use the Q&A or chat box throughout the presentation to submit your questions, and we will get to those at the very end. So I just want to present today's speakers. First up, we will have Valerie Castillo. She is the Vice President of Marketing at Trust You, the world's largest guest feedback platform. So she has over 9 years of experience in the hospitality industry, previously having worked as a product marketing manager on the hospitality cloud at Cvent. And currently she is leading Trust You's strategy to better inform and educate hoteliers on the importance and value of guest feedback. Next up, we'll have Hayat Adhanom. Hayat Adhanom, the Sales Director at StayNTouch. Sorry, Hayat. He's been in the cloud and SaaS space for over 8 years and has been working with industries from healthcare to education and now in the hospitality industry for the last 1.5 years with StayNTouch. He loves working for companies ahead of the technology curve that are always displaying foresight in their respective industries and disrupting the paradigm via innovation. As Sales Director for StayNTouch, he oversees growing partnerships in US and Western Europe. And lastly, we'll have Justine Pentafalo, Client Services Manager at Travel Tripper. Since joining the Travel Tripper team in 2015, Justine has supported a vast array of hotels in the New York City and Florida markets. In addition, she oversees the consortia and call center programs at Travel Tripper. And prior to that, she grew into multiple roles at a top-rated hotel group in New York City. So when she is not optimizing revenue for independent hotels, she can be found leading her friends to victory in bar trivia and is also the captain of the Travel Tripper skee ball team. Welcome, guys. Welcome, Valerie, Hayat, Justine. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Nancy.
All right. So today's webinar is inspired by the recent guest experience assessment report that all 3 companies have recently put out. This report was put together after a survey of 300 hoteliers to sort of gain an understanding of guest engagement trends and their adoption in the industry. So if you haven't gotten a copy of this report yet, you will get a copy following the webinar. It will be sent to you as a link. So at a very high level, here are some of the key takeaways from the report. I won't read through them, but the general gist is the first one is the need to invest in a variety of check-in and service options. The second one is leveraging technology for more customized communication. And the last one is gaining a better grasp on guest data. So we will be hearing a little bit of all 3 of these takeaways today as the presenters share their insights from these takeaways. So our agenda, first, we're going to introduce how the guest experience impacts a hotelier's business. After that, we'll look into discovering which methods of communication lead to stronger guest satisfaction. Following that, we'll be talking about identifying the different ways that hoteliers can take advantage of mobile technology. After that, we'll be discussing how to capture and utilize guest data to improve the guest experience. And lastly, we'll be reviewing the key takeaways and also answering any follow-up questions after that. All right, so I will now turn it over to Valerie.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our webinar today. We're really excited to be speaking with you. When we published the report that Nancy was just referencing, what we did first was we looked at all of the hotelier insights and kind of drew some conclusions based on the trends that we saw. And I also really enjoyed looking at it because I was able to pair it with some of the studies that TrustYou has done, actually from the opposite side of the perspective, from the guest perspective. So if we go to the next slide, I'll show you some of the findings that we've found in the studies that we did. So we actually surveyed over 900 travelers about a year ago. And there are some really interesting findings to compare these two studies because you can really see both sides of the story and compare what's similar. So one of the discoveries of the traveler study was that text and social messaging with guests can actually help drive higher satisfaction levels. And I'll actually dive into those details a bit later in my section of the presentation. And of course, high satisfaction levels mean that guests might want to leave a review for your hotel. So we found in the same set of studies that guests are 3.6 times more likely to leave a review and 16% more likely to give a 5-star review if the hotels explicitly ask for one. So really pairing the communication channel and asking for feedback is the best way to, again, improve your hotel's reputation. And it's important because 95% of travelers read reviews before making a booking decision. That was also established in one of our traveler studies. And a hotel's average review score is one of the most important factors in a booking decision after price and location. So therefore, it's very important to start the guest journey on the right foot with proper communication. And that's really how, again, the guest experience can make a big impact on your business. So I'll now pass it over to Hyatt for kind of his high-level insights on the guest experience and how it impacts business.
Great, Valerie. I appreciate that. Yeah, so here at Stay in Touch and through this assessment, I think we found a lot of interesting data, and there's a recognition in the industry that there's a pretty big gap in terms of the technology being used for the guest experience, and where the opportunity lies here is to really assess the data and come up with an actionable plan on what kind of technology you can use to address some of these gaps. So I think that what we're really focused on here at Stay in Touch is giving a hotel or enabling a hotel through technology and through multiple touch points with a guest. So I'll give you a quick story on my own experience. I've stayed recently at a bigger hotel. I don't need to name the hotel, but I was staying there with my wife and with my daughter and one of her cousins, and we were in the room. It was about 8 in the morning on a Sunday, and a housekeeper just walks right in without even knocking. They just came right in the room, and the kids are running around, and that was something that was awkward for us. For me, it wasn't really that big of a deal, but then it happened again at 9 a.m., right? And for us, that really shifted the experience. Up to that point, it had been a great experience with the hotel, and because of that, it made it a little awkward. It just shifted the entire demeanor of our stay. So the point is that you can use technology to know more about the guests, whether it's simple things, nuances like when they're checking out, when they're checking in, what their preferences are, and those intangibles add up to a lot. So that's something that we at Stay in Touch, I know TrustYou and Travel Tripper are really focused on, giving you a complete kind of approach to really get or stay connected and engaged with the guest, so that you're able to drive that proactive service, know more about what they want, what they don't want, and mitigate any kind of miscommunication. In addition, if we think about consumer behavior right now and just the way we do things, everything is personalized. I'm able to order, something from Uber Eats while I'm doing this webinar with you guys, to, going online and looking at, rates for a mortgage real time. So everything is adding up to high velocity personalization. So what we're trying to do here at Stay in Touch is give hoteliers, and what we are doing is giving them a core system, the PMS, to really drive that connectivity with guests, and in turn, showing a commitment to the guests via technology. You're going to learn more about them and then can communicate more effectively with them going forward. So we go to the next slide.
Thank you. So we find that when your staff is prepared and they are aware for anything that's potentially coming their way, the whole check-in process and the guest experience is just more smooth. We don't want to wait for our guests to arrive to get working on making their stay absolutely incredible. When surveyed, this survey found that 25% of hotels said that they encourage their employees to be proactive with guests and learn as much as possible and had the resources and tools to communicate with their guests. And so I think it's extremely important to have your team feel as comfortable as possible when speaking with guests prior to their arrival, as well as during their stay and after their stay. This will not only allow the day of check-in to run smoothly, but it will also allow your employees to be prepared for anything that's coming their way, and also anything that could potentially go wrong with their stay and then how to recover. So allow your team to take ownership and give the best services possible. Your efforts will definitely not go unnoticed, no matter how big or small, because we all know that a happy guest is more apt to write a stellar review for your hotel. And we know that stellar reviews at Travel Tripper help you grow your rating, gain more reservations based on your positive reviews, and increase your direct conversions. So we can jump right into it.
All right, thanks, Justine. I'm going to turn it back over to Valerie to talk about methods of communication for stronger guest satisfaction.
All right, thank you. So to start out, I'll reference back again one more time to the guest experience assessment report, because again, one of the key findings that I thought was so interesting was that 80% of hotels, when we asked them, what type of communication they were using or best methods of communication with guests, they were still using phone calls to communicate with guests primarily. Also, I think there was also a very high percentage in the 70th percentile that said, we just use the front desk. And while that's definitely an option and one that still needs to be a part of the on-site experience, there are situations that call for more real-time communication. I think more and more people are hesitating to pick up a phone. I was also surprised to hear that statistic because a lot of the more recent hotels that I've stayed in actually don't have a phone at all. So that's not actually incorporated as part of their communication method. So we do need to come up with a good method here. So thank you, Nancy, for showing this slide. For 73% of guests actually say that they communicate digitally with hotels. So again, referencing back to the study on travelers, these are the types of reported conversations that the guests were actually saying that they were having. So more so, we do see the phone call and in person here as well, but we're also seeing much more higher levels in email, text messaging, social media, and 68% of them actually outright state that they prefer this written electronic communication over phone calls, mediators, or being in person. It's kind of the new wave, the new movement is, we're very digitalized, we're texting everything, we're writing everything down. We want to get all of our ideas and messages out there, and that really should be no different when we're communicating with a hotelier as we do with any other service. So to dig into this a little bit more, we'll go to the next slide and actually highlight the top 3 guest preferred digital communication methods. Oh, I think just one back. There should be a slide. Yeah. So so again, email, messaging, these were very highly reported communication methods from the traveler study that we did. You'll also see when it comes down to it, that hotels and providers really need to be able to engage with guests when they have additional questions really throughout their stay. So you see this 27% actually coming from a hotel's own website. So likely the live chat feature that they might have, or a contact us page that they might have. Again, 78% of travelers are reporting that they visit a hotel's website often or, before their stay. So really the communication and what we call the on-site experience really starts even prior to arriving on site. It starts from the time of booking. So from booking all the way until a guest checks out, we really need to make sure that the communication methods are solid and they're the ones that the guests prefer. So another way that this impacts, if we go to the next slide with my happy and sad face, we see that positive communication impacts guest satisfaction. So going back to one of the first points I made during our introduction slides, the channel in which guests use to communicate with their hotel actually does have a direct relationship to guest satisfaction levels. And that was one thing that we tried to evaluate in our traveler study. We saw that guests who had used or reported using a messaging or social media channel had also reported higher levels of satisfaction with the hotels that they had stayed with within that past year. So these were significantly higher than when guests did not use one or both of these methods. So therefore, hoteliers really do have the opportunity to increase guest satisfaction, to turn that frown face upside down by adding social and messaging solution channels to their traditional forms of communication with guests. So moving right along into how this can be accomplished at your hotel. With all of the options that guests have available, you know, you're going to get a little bit lost in the shuffle. If you're using one program for your email, you also have a mobile app that you need to take care of. And then maybe you're using a web chat provider on a different channel. These conversations are likely then not speaking to each other. They're not telling one cohesive story about the guest. Likely the conversation that they had via email will not be referenced, or it would take a while to reference if they went into then a web chat conversation prior to their stay or during their stay. So obviously these can be very much disconnected channels if you're using them from all of these different methods. So with a guest messaging platform, you can actually engage with the guests via all of these channels and keep guests informed and manage their expectations and even offer upgrades. And it's all combined into one view. So you're consolidating it down to just one single platform and conversation, really. So each guest really has one conversation no matter what channel they're using. So if the guest is texting prior to check-in, then asking questions in their room via an Alexa that you might have, and finally submitting feedback via a web chat, the entire conversation is saved in one place. So to give you a little bit of a visualization of that, we'll go to the next slide. And here we display the start of a live chat channel. So as a guest arrives on your site, they would be able to start a chat, entering their contact details so that, you know, no matter who's having the conversation, they know who they are. So they can start this real-time conversation, answer any questions that they might have. I will say that this is also a great way to answer questions prior to booking and gives them personalized info that they might need that they might not have been able to find by clicking around on your website. So by engaging in this conversation, you can also help drive direct bookings because they're getting to their answers faster. You know, they don't have to do their own research here. But as I said before, one of the key elements of hotel guest messaging is that all of these conversations, wherever they happen with a staff person on site, whether they happen, again, with someone on site at your hotel or an external service center representative, really whoever is talking to them, the conversations can be visible by everyone who needs them. So you can take any channel conversation and we can turn it into the next slide view. We can connect it to one ongoing conversation. So again, you're kind of seeing the back end of the system here. Obviously, this is a test account, but you're connecting it to one ongoing conversation. You can see internal staff notes. You can communicate via text message. You can actually see the channel that the guest is using, no matter what message that they're sending. And all of this can luckily also connect to your CRM or PMS, so that guest data is actually also added in here. You know how long they've been a customer, you know how many reservations they've made, and you can really tailor your discussions to that conversation that you're having, again, no matter what channel that you're using. So if we go to the next slide, just to kind of summarize the benefits of incorporating more communication in your guest experience strategy. The multi-channel communication is really just one of the many benefits of guest messaging platform. And each of these benefits that you see here is really twofold. And that's what we strive for here at Trust You, making sure that we benefit both the hotel for ease of use and and also some bigger goals that you have in mind, like driving revenue or direct bookings or operational excellence. And it also benefits the guests because when they can communicate in real time, when they can book easier, when they feel like the hotel is operating at the highest capacity, their guest satisfaction levels rise, and they're a much more satisfied customer at the end of the day. So we really see the benefits here for a hotelier in your day-to-day operations, and also for the guests, because at the end of the day, we're all here to make sure that guests keep staying at hotels, for the foreseeable future. And so with that, I will go ahead and pass it along to our partners at StayNTouch with Hyatt to discuss more about the importance of the mobile guest experience.
Great, Valerie, thank you. Excellent. So, I think Valerie hit on a lot of great points, and literally while she was doing her section of the PowerPoint, my dentist office texted me to remind me of an appointment, which I think is great because I would have forgot. So I think, there's a lot of advantages. There's a lot of opportunities here. And I think that what we found from our assessment survey in conjunction with Trust You and Travel Tripper, that, there's a need, there's definitely a desire to come up with an equation that's going to give guests a more mobile and modern experience. And I think that that's really one of the purposes of us being here today, is to give you guys some ideas on how you can approach having a more complete mobile ecosystem, from the PMS to texting to reputation management to channel management as well. So if we go to the next slide. So I think one of the most important stats here that we got from our assessment, the guest experience assessment, was 68% of respondents recognized that they need to establish or improve their use or adoption of mobile technology. All right, so we've identified a void, and with StayNTouch, we provide a way for a hotelier and a hotel group to kind of emerge into mobility, provide them a system that can work within the current environment, which are in many cases PC based, and kind of have older front desk stations, and allow them a scalable model so that they can evolve to mobility, and then tie in a lot of those tools that Trust You uses, and that texting capability. Alexa is something that's on the horizon, and we'll talk a little bit more about where we think that's going to go. But yeah, so there is definitely a huge opportunity here, and I think that for the guests, and just for consumers in general, if you're not providing a medium via mobility to connect or to provide any type of communication, then you're not only kind of disservicing the guest, or not giving them the optimal experience, you're also losing out on revenue opportunities, because the way that we buy things now, you're on your phone, you see a visual, you see you're on Amazon, you're on Uber, you're on whatever services you use, you see an image, you're like, yeah, I want that, and you just get it, and it goes right to your Venmo, or it goes to whatever payment system you have set up on your devices. But that is how we're emerging as consumers. That's how we're evolving. So harnessing that is going to be a huge opportunity, and it's going to show tangible results for hoteliers. And if we go to the next slide. I think that what we're finding is providing a more choice-centric guest experience is really where people see value, right? So if you want to go to the self-service line in the airport, or you want to deal with an agent, that's up to you. So giving guests that choice, that option, is something that they see value in. In addition, you're reducing friction, right? So you're increasing communication across the hotel operationally, when we're looking at mobile housekeeping, to having a mobile front desk, to having a mobile check-in and a mobile guest engagement strategy. You're basically making that data linear. You're connecting all those data points and making the hotel a lot more intelligent. So I think that that's something that's the big picture that a lot of hoteliers that are forward thinking, that's where they want to go. They want to have that cohesion that Valerie mentioned when it comes to the technology they're using. They want everything tied together. And so that's really at the crux of our thinking here at StayNTouch, is enabling the user experience from guests to staff. And if we go to the next slide. Oh, next slide, okay. So kind of harping on that, or touching on the guest experience assessment results, we look at self-service check-in. A lot of hoteliers don't think it's that glamorous, right? They don't want to take away from the high-touch guest experience, and in some cases that's definitely, I think, a valid point. But the way we see self-service, and the way a lot of guests interpret it, is a convenience thing, right? So that when your lobby is jammed up, you've got two groups coming in, you've got kids running around the lobby, with their parents. You have a way to kind of hit the herd and give guests option to speed up their check-in, right? And so those things matter when it comes to the overall guest experience. The check-in process is really one of the first impressions, or it is the first impression of the property. So giving guests convenience through technology is what's going to drive not only service scores, but also results when it comes to reviews. And it's it's really a competitive advantage to really leverage technology like self-service check-in, which is something that StayNTouch has built into the PMS. So I think that there's definitely some, a lot of the hotels that we surveyed here see it as somewhat of an opportunity, but the key is thinking about a way that's practical for your lobby design, for your culture at your hotels. And it can be something that a hotel is completely self-service centric, right, where that's really the central point of the lobby, or it can be something where you use it as a supplemental option for groups, or for when the lobby gets jammed up, or when there's a lot of guests checking in. So having an open mind to that, I think, is going to be key, and there's a big opportunity there as well. If we go to the next slide. And so, I think about, when I first saw, self-service, at the grocery store, right? And I was like, oh, this is kind of, I don't know what this is about. And that was probably about, I guess it was like 14 years ago. And now, that's typically the preference for a lot of people that are in a rush, or that just don't want to wait in line or anything like that. So guests adopt technology that makes things simpler very quickly. We have a group in the Netherlands, actually, that really helped us hone in on self-service, and they saw a 66% adoption in year one. So 66% of their guests were just gravitating towards self-service check-in. So what that really proved to us is that giving guests that option of service is really valuable, and people will adopt technology that makes things faster. Same thing with mobile check-in and checkout. Having that intel of the guests before they arrive, knowing that they like a romance package, or they like to have a city tour, or that it's their anniversary and they want some flowers and some strawberries or whatever in the room when they arrive. That's what drives loyalty, those nuances, those intangibles. So giving your guests communication tools, whether it's texting, whether it's mobile check-in, mobile checkout, things like that, it gives you more access to the guests, and then in turn allows you to get to know them better and drive better service. Now, on the last point here, I think that there is kind of a hesitation with mobile technology when it comes to reducing the engagement, like the front desk engagement, or when a guest arrives on property. I think that it all depends on how you approach the mobile technology you're using. You don't have to reduce interaction. You can use it to complement your current approach and get to know the guest more, or preempt your communication so that when that guest gets there, you know what they want, you know what kind of experience they want. So I think that it's really up to the hotelier. It can be tailored around their culture, and especially on the back of the house side, between the back of the house and the front of the house, housekeeping, the front desk. Mobility is going to do nothing but increase efficiency and increase communication. So I think that that's really a big opportunity there as well. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, and I think standardization, when you use mobility, I think that that's a huge benefit, because in most cases when a guest wants to do early check-in, it's going to be based on the front desk agent they're talking to, if you charge for that, or upgrades, things like that. Standardizing that through mobility and giving the guest control, because that's really where you'll see conversion, right? Where it's up to the guests. They're not being sold or not being pitched. They're saying, you know what, I'm going to Boston for the weekend, for our anniversary, for for a business trip. I want a bigger room, or I want to check in early. Giving guests those options, you'll see a direct impact on additional revenue. So mobile check-in, texting allows you to standardize that, and through that control, you'll see actual results when it comes to ancillary revenue. So I think that this stat really tells the story that there's again a big opportunity. So if we go to the next slide here. And so just touching on that, monetizing upgrades, giving guests real-time access to what's available from an inventory standpoint. A lot can change from when they make the reservation on an OTA or directly to when they actually arrive at the hotel. So if anything, you're only giving them extra touch points to drive that ancillary revenue. And also communicating with them when the room is not ready, just giving them that visibility so that they can adjust their plans accordingly. So, again, a convenience thing. And then the late checkout, there's two sides to this. I mean, if someone wants to extend their stay, they're on vacation, whatever, and they want to stay for a couple more hours, giving them that option at a nominal cost, most people will do that, and I think that that's, again, a value for the guest. And then the way we buy today, as we were saying in the beginning, the consumer behavior today is all about tapping a finger and then buying something, real time. So the more you increase micro moments with the guests, text, mobile check-in, texting while they're on property, the more likely you are to increase that guest spend. Next slide. Okay, so I'm actually going to pass this off to Justine now, and she's going to talk about how to utilize guest data to improve the guest experience.
Thank you. Nancy, we can just jump into the first slide. Thanks for the introduction. So when we think about the guest experience, we tend to think about the guest standing in front of you at your front desk with their credit card ready to check in. But really, we have to start thinking about it before then. So we have to start thinking about the guest experience begins when they're not only searching for your hotel, but they're also confirming their reservation for your hotel. It is important to collect as much data as possible before your guest arrives. And so when they arrive at your front desk, you already are anticipating their needs. From our survey, it found that 52% of hotel surveys stated that they were using data to personalize their guest stay, and we're always looking for more ways to improve. So that means there's 48% of hotels that are missing out on this data or are finding it to be challenging. So a great place to start is actually going to be on your hotel's booking engine. On the next slide, we see here that many booking engine providers, Travel Tripper included, have options to ask guests specific questions relating to their nature of their stay or ask for any specific request directly on their booking engine. This can be the ability to add free text, tell us why you're coming, what time you're arriving, or you can select multiple options like we see here. This functionality gives the guests an option to let the hotel know why they're coming, if they need any sort of special attention or have a specific request. We want to give the hotel an opportunity to accommodate for the guest and get to know their guest before they arrive. So this truly allows the guest's experience to begin prior to arrival and opens the door for communication with your front desk staff and your guest that's arriving. There are all sorts of travelers, and while adding notes and guest preference questions on the booking engine like this does make the process a little bit more, little longer and a little more drawn out on the booking engine, this is not necessarily required. All hotels in our system definitely have an opportunity to say you can skip over this. So that means that the people that are taking the time to fill out this survey on your booking engine are really looking forward to letting you know why they're coming, what they're looking forward to. So they're spending that time. So we just want to make sure that it's not going unnoticed. So this is going to allow you to curate the guest experience prior to their arrival, open that communication, and then they'll be more apt to engage with your staff upon arrival, take advantage of any upsells or any other services that you could potentially be offering. So now you have this information. So of course we have to make sure that we're going to use it. So your CRS system will send this information into your PMS, your property management system. So you'll have to make sure that either your concierge or your reservations manager is then making initial contact with the guest. We have to make sure that this information is not lost or overlooked because it's super valuable and could make or break your guest experience. Something to keep in mind, because they are booking direct, you have their information, especially if they have made a request. You can feel free to reach out to them. When booking on OTAs like Expedia or Booking.com, they're withholding the guest information. So even if the guest does leave a note and it comes over, you really aren't able to make any sort of communication with them. Having this hotel, its information as a hotel puts you ahead of the game because now you're privy to this information, so definitely use it to your advantage. On the next slide is actually one of my favorite stories from a hotel. This is actually from a hotel in California. A young couple requested on their reservation that they would like to have framed photos of Jeff Goldblum in their room upon arrival. I know, a very strange request. I don't think he would personally be my first choice to be in my hotel room. But the hotel, which is the Huntley Hotel in Santa Monica, they happily obliged. They stated while, yes, it was outlandish, it was not impossible and it was in their realm to achieve. This not only made the couple stay at the hotel, but it actually went viral. They were featured on the Today Show, on ABC, and yes, the request was a little bit ridiculous, but it was still within the reach of the hotel and could be easily accomplished. In this case, it provided positive press for the hotel, and it didn't cost the hotel anything because they actually charged the guest for the frames. So if a guest does take the time to include information like this in their reservation, it's really important to take the time to review these requests, make sure they're acknowledged, and if they cannot be accomplished, make sure that expectations are managed. I spent many years working in operations for a hotel in New York City, and I can tell you that some of the requests we received were indeed outlandish and sometimes borderline jokes. We once had to deliver caviar to someone's room at midnight on the dot. They weren't even there, but of course they requested it, so we wanted to make sure that it was something that they were serious about and something that they wanted to make happen. Other hotels can take advantage of resources they have within house to make these requests a reality for their guests. So if someone asks something as simple as 2 drinks to be delivered upon arrival, you can use this information, reach out to the guest, ask them, what time will you be arriving? And then, of course, manage based on that to coordinate with your in-house food and beverage outlet. The guests like to make sure that they're being heard and that they're being taken care of. The CRS that you're working with most likely has multiple options for customizations for these questions that you're asking for your guests. So why is the guest coming? Are they coming for business? Are they coming for pleasure? Is it a mix of both? Obtaining this information is crucial. For example, if a guest indicates that they're coming for business, you might not want to put them on the floor right under your rooftop bar, but maybe on a quieter floor and ensure that they have a strong Wi-Fi signal. They're also, if they're coming to celebrate a special milestone, birthday or anniversary or honeymoon, definitely pay attention to their reservation. Did they book the smallest room at your hotel? Because this could also be an opportunity for your staff to reach out to the guest and potentially sell them a bigger, more expensive room or enhancements at the time of booking. We can go to the next slide, Nancy. So now that you've wowed your guests with your stay and they're raving about your staff, we need them to write a review on TripAdvisor. Using post-stay emails in conjunction with your PMS and that information that you gathered from the guests prior to arrival or during their check-in, You can use this to reach out to the guests after their stay and ask them to write a review of your hotel or ask for general feedback from your hotel and what your staff can do better. Genuine TripAdvisor reviews from satisfied guests are truly the best marketing that a hotel can get. Positive guest experiences starting at the time of booking and continued through arrival and after departure can lead to positive TripAdvisor reviews, boosting your ranking on TripAdvisor and ultimately boosting your direct conversion. Research shows that TripAdvisor influenced $546 billion of travel spend in 2017. So that is 10.3% of all global spending on tourism. And this influence will continue to grow. So this is an absolute jumping off point for travelers, not even just starting with their search, but they can also book directly. It's now serving as a meta search site. And it also serves as an information portal to your hotel. And this is not going unnoticed. The higher quality of reviews on TripAdvisor, the higher your ranking and the higher your visibility. This comes down to getting your guests to leave sparkling reviews about your hotel and your staff. What better way to do that than to nail your guest experience? We can go to the next slide, Nancy. So now that we've exceeded our guest expectations and they left us a fabulous review, we want them to come back and stay at our hotel again. How can we reward them? Creating a loyalty or members only program at your hotel will allow your guests to sign up directly on your booking engine or at check-in for a unique program created and managed directly by you, the hotel. They can either sign up or log in on the booking engine, and the hotel will have access to hidden rate plans, private rates on your booking engine. This could be anything from a unique rate plan offering a specific discount to additional perks such as a late checkout, early check-in, or any availability upon request. So while not necessarily having to give them a discount on their stay, having the value add is definitely visible and attractive to guests. Some CRS companies, including Hilton, actually allow you to view the discounted rate that you would receive if you did sign up for their loyalty program. You're now actually able to view the value saved prior to joining the program, and of course, you're going to want to join. This information should then be allowed to be downloaded from your hotel. That's the case that it is in ResTrip, and you can then update your mailing lists and continue to market towards your members that have signed up with specials, offers, and so much more. Guest loyalty is really beneficial from all fronts at your hotel. You, of course, want your guests to enjoy the hotel and be enticed to come back and book again. And on our final slide, just a quick wrap up of everything we talked about. That's it. We have just reviewed the ways that collecting our guest information and data on your hotel booking engine is beneficial for all parts of the guest stay experience from beginning to end. So taking care of your guests prior to arrival can lead to great reviews, which will ultimately get your guests to come back and stay with you. Thanks, Nancy.
All right. Thanks, Justine. All right. So just to share some of the key takeaways today, and I just want to put out the fact that we are also accepting questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, now is the time to put them and type them into the panel, and then we'll address them afterwards. So our key takeaways today, the first one is to incorporate digital communication channels from the very beginning to better engage your guests. Track your guest satisfaction levels to understand how communicating with guests impacts your review score. From Hyatt, we learned about introducing mobile to your guest engagement strategy and giving your guests the power of choice and convenience. As well as leveraging mobile solutions on ancillary revenue and streamlining operations. From Justine, we've learned about using your booking engine to your advantage and how surveying the guests during the booking process allows you to initiate communication prior to arrival, and as well as rewarding happy guests and enticing them to stay with you again by offering member exclusive rates or loyalty programs. So one of the first questions I have actually is from the audience, and it's directed more towards Valerie. It's talking about the multi-channel communication tool and the possibility of linking conversations to guest profiles. And I think this brings up a really good question about integration, about centralizing communication. I actually have a small little anecdote to share. I was just in Amsterdam over the last week, and I have a very young baby and especially requested a baby bed, not only on the reservation, typed it in, but I also made sure to call the hotel as well and ask for the baby bed. And then, of course, when I got to check in, there was no baby bed, and it had not been notated. So I think the idea of centralizing the communication and making sure it's received on all points across all departments is quite important. So Valerie, could you address maybe how that tool helps to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is definitely a big question that we get with guest communication tools, because really, unless you can integrate with your booking, even the booking engine, so that you can start conversations from the very beginning, your PMS, your CMS, it's best if it's all connected. So we do have connections. Actually, StayNTouch is one of the best PMS connections that we have with the guest messaging solution. So if you are using a StayNTouch PMS, that would also work. And we've also announced over the last few months a couple of new integrations, and we'll be announcing those throughout the rest of the year as well. But right now, there are other ways to get your guest data into the guest messaging tool, through other API connections, through writing an SFTP. So there are multiple ways that you can make the connection, but we are working very closely with the partners that we have a two-way integration with, and making sure that that they can use both of those tools very easily.
Mm-hmm. And Valerie, this is another question that came from the audience. They would like to know how the guest communication is managed. Is it a centralized platform, a dashboard? Just a little bit more explanation on the product.
Yeah, exactly. So the guest communication is all centralized. So as long as they're using the same phone number that's associated to the right email address, all of the messages will show up within one conversation. And all of your internal staff also can make comments within the conversation as well. So we will definitely be sending out more information about the details of that platform and how it works, along with the recording and the slides after the presentation. So I'm glad people are interested.
Great. This question is directed more at Hyatt. Can you please explain more about how to introduce mobile to the guest? So I'm guessing mobile technologies, and how do you get guests to adopt these technologies?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very interesting question. And I think also, having an adoption plan, or like a user experience adoption plan, is really crucial, because a lot of this stuff can kind of come across as like bells and whistles, but it can be also very impactful. So I think it's about kind of storyboarding the guest experience in terms of what kind of scenarios you want the guest to experience, whether it's mobile check-in, self-service check-in. Are you going to be texting with the guest? And then, having kind of a tangible way to, measure success. I think StayNTouch, Trust You, Travel Tripper, we all have benefits, and all have, we all kind of fit in the ecosystem of a complete mobile experience. But with that said, I think it's about planning, right? And thinking about, okay, what is the guest journey that we want to provide from booking, all the way to post-stay, and what are the touch points that we want to look at, whether it's, sending a follow-up email after they make the reservation, to the mobile check-in process, to texting the guest on the day of check-in, texting throughout the stay, and then post-stay, what do we want to communicate with this guest? So really mapping that out. And then like Valerie was saying, having, or I think Nancy, you were saying, like having an SOP around the mobile strategy, like knowing what you want to accomplish, right? And that way, you'll have a clear approach when it comes to the guest experience, and it won't just seem fragmented. So I think that's really key. I think there's a lot of noise out there. I think that's fair to say. But I think the value, and I think, both Valerie and Justine have really touched on a lot of the key points here, is having a provider that is going to guide you in the process and in the strategy, because software is great, technology is great, only until you have a plan to use it and measure it, right? So I think that that's key. But I think all the the people here today have cohesive systems that can benefit hotels and guests directly, if that makes sense.
Yes. Great. I have a question that I'm going to direct at Justine. Justine, you had mentioned loyalty rates, especially in terms of cultivating guest loyalty. And I'm sure a lot of the audience, they come from independent hotels and they don't necessarily have, a brand behind them and don't have that membership loyalty program. What are other ways that they could offer, loyalty rates to their best guests?
Sure. So I have seen it done a number of different ways. One is which, upon checking out, giving the guest an offer code to for a member rate that they can then type in on the booking engine, retrieve that rate that no one else can see. It's only really accessible through that code. In recent developments, what Travel Trippers does, we do allow independent hotels. They're not interface. It is not an integration such as when you think loyalty, you think of large casino properties. In that case, of course, these are smaller hotels that can manage their member profiles directly in ResTrip. So they can create the setup, they can create the login, they can create and curate what the information the guest is receiving, and it's viewable on the booking engine. However, it does require yourself to sign in. And so if your booking engine does have that capability, you can do it that way, or you can just have it privately, either a sign up or a jot form on your own hotel's website, or giving it directly to guests that have stayed at your hotel already and are checking out.
Thanks, Justine. And I kind of want to wrap up with a last question, kind of a forward-thinking question about what technology is going to look like in the future and how it's going to influence the guest experience in the future. And Hyatt, we were talking before the webinar, and you had mentioned voice activated technology, so things like Alexa and Google Home. What are your thoughts on that? How, are we going to start talking to our hotel rooms anytime in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely something that is viable, and it's going to, the adoption is going to continue to grow. I mean, I think that if you asked me this 6 months ago, because there's been hotel groups that we're working with and kind of doing onboarding with, and they're like, oh, can we, do an Alexa integration? I'm like, well, how's that going to work? But, now, and, I've been to a couple of conferences, and I've, talked with some groups, and, I think it's a very tangible strategy, right? And I think there's things that have to be worked out when it comes to privacy, turning it off and turning it on. But what I think about is, when my daughter wants to learn about something, like what sound does a penguin make? She grabs my phone and she says, she does, Siri, and she says, what sound does a penguin make? So what it means to me is that the generation, before us, and even our generation that we're in now, and the generations, across the board, this is becoming how we interact with technology. So if you don't start thinking about this now, it's kind of like mobile technology for hotels maybe 10 years ago, right? If you didn't start thinking about it now you're trying to play catch up. So I think that starting to think about how to, leverage voice technology is going to be a component of success when it comes to the guest experience.
Definitely. Justine, having worked in a hotel, what are your thoughts on that? Justine? We may have lost Justine.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry about that. No, I was going to say is if everyone else around you is using it and you're not, you've already been left behind. So just make sure to take note of what everyone else is doing and offer that, even if it's something that might be a little bit more challenging to your staff. They'll get used to it. It might take a while, but I think it's definitely best to be ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm. And Valerie, one last thought on voice technology. How is that incorporated into guest communication? How will that be affected?
Yeah, so we actually have a great partner that's innovating in this space. The company is called Valera. And their actually entire product is about ensuring that hotels can use this voice technology. So primarily Amazon Echo in each of their hotel rooms to make requests. And also for it's a great way to kind of streamline the questions that a hotel staff gets too, because I'm sure for any of you working at a hotel that sometimes you feel like you are Siri or Alexa sometimes, you're just expected to know questions about everything. So incorporating, this type of technology can be like adding additional members to your staff. So there are technologies in place that are allowing hoteliers to do this much more easily, and I think that that's great. And when it comes to directly to our company at Trust You, we definitely saw that this was a trend that was happening. So we have already set up an integration with Valera. So any questions that might come in that might still need to be asked to a staff member, and maybe Alexa and Siri don't know the right answer, they can actually respond to those as well. So you could actually respond through your Alexa, or you could send them a text message if they had questions or something like that. So definitely a new emerging technology, but I think we're going to see it really take off in 2019.
All right. Good points. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Hyatt and Justine, for all of your insights today. This has been a really fantastic webinar. Lots of great material here. If anyone has any further questions, please feel free to email Trust You. They've set up the webinar and you'll be able to get in touch with them. Again, everyone will be receiving a copy of the webinar as well as additional resources and materials. So look out in your inboxes for that. And everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.